This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. If you want to be part of the community that makes content like this, head over now. Ben Duckett does not leave the ball. He goes after everything. That is his signature style. Well, actually, no. Perhaps now he is best known for Duckett's Buckets, his new hat range. I don't know if Herbert Sutcliffe sold his own hats, but I would definitely have bought them if he did. But Ben Duckett does, so you don't need to be left alone without one. Chase down your own Duckett's Buckets today. Welcome to Good Areas podcast. I'm Jarrod Kimber. Today we have the Wagon Wheel podcast, which is the show where we answer your questions on cricket if you have asked them, I suppose. The best way to ask them is via Patreon. It's the best way to support us. We have the Discord over there, which is banging. I haven't been today, so I mean, it may not be banging today, but it's quite often banging. But yeah, there's plenty going on over there at any time, and you can join via Patreon, and there's plenty of other things. And it also allows you to ask questions here, but you can also ask questions on Super Chat as well. But Sam is on Patreon, and he's asked, as a cricket nerd, it's pejorative, do you find bowling or batting more interesting, and why? I find bowling more interesting. Oh, do I find bowling more interesting? Yeah, I think I find bowling. The problem with seam bowling, and you could argue this for spin, although I think there's a little bit more subtle variation within spin, but the problem with seam bowling is that it's a lot of just coming in and putting the ball roughly in the area that you've always got wickets as a kid. And, you know, so I think if you're watching Jimmy Anderson or Muhammad Asif or Vernon Philander or Josh Hazlewood or Jasper Bumrah, I find those guys more interesting than any batters, I think, as a general rule. Maybe not Brendan McCullum, but generally, I probably find them more interesting. But Morne Morkel, I don't find particularly interesting, right? It's not to say that I don't think he's an incredible bowler and, you know, a brilliant player, but I kind of know exactly what he's going to do for each delivery. So it's maybe a little bit different. So I think there are times when I find spinners and pace bowlers far more interesting, and there are times when I find them very dull. So I think they're more the outliers for me. And then, you know, Neil Wagner, obviously, I find very, very interesting. You know, R. Ashwin. These are guys that I've written about so many times, so many, you know, words. Whereas I don't find Ravi Jadeja very interesting. Batting is probably different. It's funny, when I wrote the book, I thought my big worry was when I was writing the book my big worry when I was deciding whether to write a book about batting or bowling first was more about the fact that I was terrified that bowlers were just going to say to me, I just run up and try and hit the top of off. And I think that now I'm pretty confident in writing a book, if I get a book deal on that one, about how to write that book a lot better. But I think there's so many different kinds of bowlers, right? So we were talking about this recently. I think someone might have asked this question, like, you know, what's an accurate description for a modern bowler? You know, beyond the sort of TV, cricket info, right arm, fast, medium, right? Like, there's so much more to it than that. And I think with that, I'm swinging back towards bowling. But it might just be that I'm thinking about bowlers more. So I'm not sure so I think that's where I come out on that one at the moment. But I might, if you ask me tomorrow, I might say the opposite. Sam says, is Shaun Marsh later test career useful comparison to Sanju Samson? No, I don't think so. I think Shaun Marsh, I had this argument with a Western Australian journalist once. So Western Australia has been absolutely screwed over by being on the West Coast and being so far from the rest of the country throughout the entire history of Australian cricket. It's just too far, right? Now that we have video, we have TV, it's not as big a deal. But up until recently, it was still, I think, a legitimate claim that Western Australians should make. And so I think when Shaun Marsh came through, he was kind of at the back end of that, of people being like, oh, he would have played so much more. But the issue with Shaun Marsh is he's one of the worst starters ever. And I think his issue wasn't that he was a good enough player. I think his issue was that he couldn't get in enough. And when he got in, he was a fantastic player. And when he didn't, there was an element of it didn't work. So if you go back and you have a look, he has. We mentioned him in the book. He has one of the lowest medians, I think, of kind of anyone in Test cricket history. And what would his overall average be? About high 30s, I would have thought. 34. So maybe a little bit low. I thought maybe 37. And so in 38 matches, he gets 600s and 1050s. But there's no there's no other scores. He either failed or made runs. And I think the other thing with Shaun Marsh is they decided that he was an Asian specialist, which I'm not sure was wrong, although it's a weird thing for a Western Australian cricketer. But because of that, he was probably at the wrong time. But I think that he never really lived up to the hype. And that's the one thing I would say with Sanju Samson. From a very young age, we were all told about Shaun Marsh. And he never quite lived up to the hype for many reasons, separate to what happened with Sanju Samson. But yeah, I think when he got older, he was just a bit like, he's been around forever and we know what he's really good at, but he's not always really good at it. And I think it's more to do with that. So I don't know if I'd comp those two guys. Hertz says, suppose a country about the size of Japan with strong transit infrastructure hired you to design a brand new domestic cricket structure aimed at producing the world dominating Test and T20 national teams. Forget about ODIs. ODIs are dead. How many teams, advanced, A tours, etc.? If Japan feels too specific, imagine a new country like Kimberland. Right? Imagine it every day. I think there's a few really important things that you're looking for. I'm less interested in probably the domestic cricket structure, and I'm more looking at the how many people can we get playing cricket, right? And then what is the systems that we have in place to be able to identify which people are good at cricket? And then what are the tools that we are using to get them so that they are closer to that elite version of cricket? So that's the kind of the first structure that I'm looking at. So can I get cricket into Japanese schools? Can I offer it up as some sort of, I would assume schools is the best option, but is there a club or a secondary option to get Japanese kids and young adults involved in the sport? Because there's no point me coming up with a domestic system if I can't actually make sure that there are cricketers coming through. I think both of them are important, but the second one, you can have the best domestic system in the world. If no one in that country is playing cricket, it doesn't matter. So I'd be more fascinated with that. How can I do tie-ins with Shohei Ohtani and other, Osaka and whoever else, any famous Japanese athletes or movie stars or comedians, whatever that may be. I want as many people to play the game as possible. And then I'm looking at a system that respects the it respects the population. So you don't want one team in Tokyo and then some, 3 teams in Osaka, right? Or somewhere smaller than Osaka that I can't think of at the moment. You don't want something like that. So you want to respect the population, but also make sure that geographically you actually have everywhere covered. If you look back to Australian cricket, right? We just answered it in the previous question, but Western Australia, Queensland, and Tasmania are not even involved in cricket for ages, which doesn't make any sense. Northern Territory still struggles, right? If you're a good player from NT, you have to move somewhere else. So again, making sure that is not an issue through Japan. And then you're looking at, I think you don't want too many teams, but you want a Division 1 with, let's say, 6 teams where you give out your A contracts. And then you have a larger Division 2 where you mop up all the other things. So if there is a young player in a different area from there. As far as A tours go, if you had lots and lots of money and you're doing it with a country like Japan, you just have your under 19, your A team permanently on tour all around the world, getting as much experience as possible, especially if cricket outside of Japan. I think that's the way you go about something like that. Aravind said, what would be the one cricket record that you could bet everything would never be broken? 99.94 Bradman's average, or 19 for 90, or is it something else? Both of those. Sachin, I don't think anyone is ever going to play 200 test matches for their country again. Although Joe Root's really close to that. But maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't think anyone will do that for their country again. Um, so there's 3 off the top of my head. Is it Trevor Goddard, or is it? He's got the lowest economy rate of all time. And no one's going to have a test career where they have a lower economy than like 1.76, are they, ever again? Like that's never going to happen in test cricket, even if test cricket plays again. The same, you know, you could say the same for Joel Garner, right? No one's going to have so there's actually a lot of records that probably won't be broken. Probably didn't need Sachin's one in this, but I'd still be surprised if someone plays more than 200 tests for their country. Although I suppose Root's so close. Maybe I should say after Root, no one will do that. I don't think anyone will ever take 700 wickets for their country again in Test cricket. Or certainly I don't think anyone will take 800, but even over 700, I would say. So those are a few off the top of my head. Cam says, can you give some insight into how club cricket scene in England works? Anecdotally, it seems like there are a lot more clubs that just play a lot of random friendly matches throughout the season rather than playing in a very structured competition, which is very different to my experience in Australia and New Zealand. No, you have league cricket, but yeah, it's in Australia. You basically just have league cricket, right? And then you have maybe some sort of nomadic type cricket teams occasionally, but most cricket in Australia and New Zealand would be in a normal league, whereas there is Saturday and Sunday leagues. There are friendlies. There are like cricket festival stuff in the UK, and there are lots of villages. And I remember some of these teams from Melbourne. So it does exist in places like Melbourne. I don't know if it does in the rest of Australia and New Zealand. But sometimes you'll get a team that will just play like 10 or 12 games a year, but they'll just ring up teams and organize events. That's much more common in the UK. So you have heaps of that, where there are whole clubs who don't play in any league at all, but their team still plays, you know, so many games a year. Then you have what they call in the UK jazz hat cricket, which is charity games, business games, these sort of other kinds of things. So, off the top of my head, what have I played for? So the cricketer, when I first came to the UK, had a team, and I would play for the cricketer, right? So I probably played for the cricketer. I played for the cricket writers. I played for the cricket authors. I played for the Law Society because my wife is a lawyer. I played for my wife's work team, Pension Protection Fund. What's that? So that's 6 different teams I could think of. Oh, Taverners I've played for. Probably another. Well, Andy Zoltzman's got, him and his comedian friends have their own team. So I've probably played, I didn't play for them because I got injured this year, but I've probably played for about 7 or 8 of those teams where, and some of those teams will play, like the authors seem to play like 10 or 15 games a year, right? Taverners probably play a lot of games a year. So it's not actually what you would call club cricket, but it's a club cricket thing. And it's a very different way of going about it compared to Australia and New Zealand and most cricket cultures. You get some of this in Asia. There's a lot of work, or there used to be, less so now, obviously, but there was a lot of work cricket in Asia. So it's not as if, some of this went to other countries and some of it didn't, I suppose is the best way of putting it. Lemon says, do spinners rely on fast twitch fibers? I have good strength in weights, bench press, squats, but I've never had fast twitch fibers, and I can't really bowl my offies particularly fast. I would say wrist spinners do, Lemon. I think you have to, I don't know if it's fast twitch fibers, but I think you have to be able to propel the ball down at a fairly good speed as a leg spinner, because the amount of revs you put on it just slows it down. So if you don't have some sort of natural speed within your body, you're going to be pretty slow. Off spin, I wouldn't say you do. Yeah, I wonder if the problem you've got with your off spin is maybe more a biomechanical issue, and you are maybe slowing down in another way. The most important thing with off spin, of course, is kind of the hips, right? The rotation that you can make with your hips. If you make that big rotation, you can do that at pace, which is why an off cutter is bowled at pace, right? Like what the quickest off cutters in the world are probably like high 130 kilometers an hour. People have probably even bowled them at 140, right? I've certainly seen the odd one bowled at 140. So yeah, I think they're sort of the hips and the way that they come around. So it might be a biomechanical thing, but you should be able to put pace on the ball doing it that way. Anyway, let us have a quick break here on the Wagon Wheel, and we will be back very shortly for more of this. and other things. I once made a pair in a club game, which is almost impossible to do. But I have been obsessed with batting my entire life. And so I put that into my new book, The Art of Batting. Being that I'm not very good at that skill, I decided to talk to other people who were. So I hit up as many contacts as I could just to talk about batting. Rahul Dravid, Brian Lara, A.B. de Villiers, Kumar Sangakkara, Ross Taylor, Susie Bates, Nasser Hussain, Ian Chappell, and so many, many, many more. I wanted batters to talk about how they and their friends made runs, because that is the art of batting. Welcome back. Lemon says, do we have a match factor for all-rounders? I'm thinking of looking at the top 7 batters who bowl more than 5 overs and innings in the same matches. Have you tried something like this? I don't know if you saw it, Lemon. So we just did a huge feature on all-rounders. And we looked at match factor and era factor, for batting, for bowling. We look at usage and everything else. I don't think you would say that there's any one number. So if you looked at... I'm trying to think about this the best way. But if you looked at era factor for all-rounders, which is a really good number, but if Shaun Pollock bats at 8 most of the time and Trevor Goddard opens the batting most of the time, in era factor, we're going to have to compare them to someone else in their position, right? And so in era factor, Shaun Pollock's going to look like a very good bat and Trevor Goddard's going to look like slightly subpar bat. Whereas in actual fact, the guy who can open the batting and do it only at subpar while being a frontline bowler is incredible and much more used to you than Shaun Pollock. So there isn't really a number, but go and have a look at that piece, Lemon, and you can ask other questions. But we don't really have one number. I know I've talked about this with, some analysts within the game, and I've talked to, people like Jimenez about this as well. We're all trying to work it out. And I think the big one is you have to, unless you factor in usage, you don't really get a good answer. It's one reason why average differential doesn't make any sense. It's one of the many reasons. So we're still coming. I don't think we have great numbers on all-rounders at the moment. And so, if I do what I want to do, which is the art of batting, the art of bowling, and then the 50 greatest cricketers of all time, not only am I going to have to mix across formats, I'm also going to have to try and work out something like this of how you compare an all-rounder to a non-all-rounder, a regular human player. And it's not easy. And also the other thing that you have to factor in is how much do they allow for their team to be more flexible or add an extra player? Again, it's a very important thing. And I wouldn't say it's subjective. There is an objective way of getting to it, but I don't think it's a clean objective way of getting to it. So it's really tricky once you bring in all-rounders. Rhys says, with Nissanka about to turn 28, and so presumably at his peak, I just did a podcast with a guy in Australia who's got his own podcast, Pawan, and we were talking about this as well. Could he be one of the best all-four batters in the world the next 5 years? We've got a whole article actually coming out on Nissanka as well, which Shaun's just finished. And yes, he can be one of the best all-format batters, I think. He made the 200s against Bangladesh in a test match. 2 different test matches? Yeah, in the test series. His T20 batting has gone ballistic. He made a double 100 in ODI cricket. Yeah, the explosiveness is the bit that I didn't. If you would have told me he'd be an anchor in all 3 formats, I would have been like, gotcha, I'm on board. But he looks like he's even developing beyond that. Great technique, great eye. Maybe just needed professionalism, a little bit more experience and confidence. And looks like now he can do whatever he wants. We're Team Nissanka here. Sinoi says, in a U versus 20 style debate. Oh, okay. Is that the one when you sit in the middle and right-wing people yell at you? I'm sure. What controversial topic would you want to debate versus what group of 20? Oh, okay. Run out versus man cat haters. Oh, I do spirit of cricket. Yeah, I confidently take down any kind of conversation about the spirit of cricket. So that would be easy, Sinoi. I would never want to do that, though. Why do you just want 20 people yelling at you? For hits? It's not for me. Mob says, I know that you hate the very concept, and it's still 6 months out, but who is going to be player of the tournament of the 2026 Men's Cricket World Cup next February? Benny Howell. Mob says, do you know what Rob Walter is doing with New Zealand Test team as the new coach, i.e., what his transition and squad plan is. He's only blooded new bowlers in Zimbabwe because his hand was forced. Everyone got injured, and Mariu and Phillips both scored tons in Africa with New Zealand A. New coach with aging stars dropping off. If not now, then when? No, I don't know. I suppose generally New Zealand cricket hasn't been very forthcoming with that sort of information, have they? I haven't really seen any press conferences or anything of recent times. It's worth keeping an ear out. My guess is that they would have made the decision before Rob Walter, or with the selection of Rob Walter, of what path they want to go. I would hope that's the case. So I'm hoping that they had a conversation where they just went. So when you're talking to coaches, what you go out and you look at the sorts of coaches that you want. So there might be 3 or 4 different styles, and there might be 2 or 3 other big names that you're looking at, right? And then you wait for them to come in and say, this is what we want to do with your team, right? And you're looking for style or overall strategy or 4-year plan or 5-year plan or whatever that may be. So I would hope that New Zealand have one off the back of that, and that's why they picked Rob Walter, and it all makes sense. But yeah, they're going to have to make a decision of what they want to do. It's funny for your previous question, Bob, was about the T20 World Cup. I think I'm right in saying that at the moment, the West Indies and Pakistan have got shorter odds to win that tournament than New Zealand does. It's quite a slip, right? And so the market can be wrong, and New Zealand probably still make a semi-final and blah, 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 blah. But there's not a lot of confidence in the current setup at the moment. Josh says, Kane Williamson is New Zealand's greatest batter. Yeah, he's better than Martin Crowe. And Rachin Ravindra is New Zealand's next big thing. And there's been a lot of hype that Rhys Mariu. I've got to work. Is it Mariu? I haven't heard anyone say it out loud. Anyway, that he's going to be the next big thing. He scored a 200 versus South Africa. Yeah, I haven't done my due diligence on him. I have to have a look at what we can find on NV Play. He's 23, so again, we're seeing a New Zealand player who's being very highly fated, who's a little bit older, which I like. The only thing I know about him is, and let me just check his record here. Yeah, that he averages 50 in first-class cricket. It's only from 17 games, so he hasn't been rushed in or anything at the moment. I think his top score might have been in that game against South Africa. They've already played him in a couple of ODIs. He's looked solid enough in one of those innings. I think I might have seen that, or maybe saw highlights of that. Don't think I've seen him play. I was about to say, I don't think I've seen him play any T20 cricket. He's played 2 games. No one's seen him play much T20 cricket. But yeah, I haven't done a deep study on him yet, just because I haven't really had to. I would assume that he's a chance of playing against West Indies, isn't he? So if he plays against the West Indies, I should see a few sessions of that. Does it clash with somebody else? I think it does. Is it Women's World Cup, or is it Ashes or something? I think it clashes with something, because I've already seen it in my book. But we've got a couple of pieces in the system kind of about West Indies, some of which are going when the India series comes up, and some of which are going to go when the New Zealand series come up. I'll be paying some attention to that series anyway. So I can't tell you if the hype is real, but generally hype is hype. Josh Ward says, I just watched your Crick Picks episode, Cricketers as WWD Wrestlers. Shane Warne was my first pick, who only got a passing mention. He already has the big personality in the fan base. I don't think Marlon Samuel's WWE career will survive long after their feud. Shane Warne's an interesting one though, isn't it? Because, we were kind of looking at the full package. Shane Warne would be an interesting body shape for a wrestler. Like, I don't watch wrestling anymore, so I don't know what they're like now. But, like, when my friends would watch in the 80s and 90s, Shane Warne's body shape would have been odd. Virat Kohli was my number 2, who'd play a bad guy and hates the fans because they're meant to be cheering for him. Oh, I don't mind that. I think I like Virat more than Warren there. I hadn't thought about Virat, but Virat also could be another of those sort of agent type guys who then becomes a wrestler because he's incredibly fit and strong himself. So yeah, it's an interesting one. We did that. I can't remember if we talked about this on air, but like there are some cricket writers who are massive wrestling fans, and the three of us were not, right? So it's a weird pattern that we did there, but I think someone on Discord had asked for us, and we thought it was a cool thing to look at. But you could do a really hardcore one, and I'm sure Barrett, and is it Barrett and Mash? I know Barrett is a huge wrestling fan, so he could definitely do that. Him and Mitch Johnson could probably do it on their own. I don't know if they still have their podcast. Ian says, it looks like the review into County Cricket Championship will result in no significant changes to English cricket. With large investors coming into English cricket, first through the 100, but also at Hampshire, do you think counties are signing their own death warrants? Yes. I think it's done. And I think Australia will do the next with the Big Bash, and they'll take the extra money, but eventually they will no longer have the independence or the ability to do what they want from then on in. But you get the money. That's kind of what you have to do, and I do think that cricket will change quite significantly now. Aravind says, there's been rumblings about Test cricket being divided in two divisions, but as far as I could tell, it hasn't become official. Nope, not yet. What's your feeling on whether it will actually happen for the next Test Championship cycle? Oh, okay. Or more importantly, they introduce relegation and promotion. I don't think they can bring in two divisions without relegation and promotion. I think they'll make it almost impossible for a team to be relegated, but I think it has to be part of it. I don't know if it'll come in for the next. There was a flurry of information. You've got to remember, Aravind, the way that it works is they meet together in ICC events, and we get a flurry of information that comes out. And then, of course, they all go back to their own boards to do their own jobs again. And so the information dies off. It's whether it keeps the momentum up and that there are people moving it. And to be honest, I haven't really asked around about this much. Neil Mouthorpe and Dan Bredick are probably a lot more on this than I have been. So yeah, I'm sort of in the background of this at the moment. I think it would be hard to happen for the next World Test Championship cycle, but it's not impossible. What's that? 18 months? Yeah, it's very possible, but I think a lot of things would have to happen at the right time for that one. Maybe the one after, but yeah. PJ says, last week I asked a question with regard to a hypothetical $1 billion lotto win. Sort of related to that. Is basically the only real money that a cricket league or the ICC can make TV money, specifically Asian TV money. No, you can make quite a lot off Australian and English TV money, but the problem is that those industries, and similar things can happen to India as well, that you kind of need there to be some sort of war going on or some sort of bidding process, and then also generally in England and Australia, it's going to be Ashes related, right? Like, so it is harder to make it outside of that. But TV money is the most money at the moment. That will be taken over by streaming money, almost gone. And when you say, why isn't the TV money market bubbled yet? So the issue here is that TV's struggling, right? But what's the one thing that people actually all sit down to watch? It's live reality, big events, and it's sport, right? Which is, again, another live reality, big event. So there is, from that perspective, TV is actually probably spending too much money on sport because it makes sense. In a streaming world, though, things are going to change very, very differently. So I think that with streaming, things will change. How much cricket can the average Indian resident realistically watch? Let's say there's 100 million Indian fans, right? Sorry, 100 million Indian cricket fans. Like, that's a lot of cricket that they can watch. Like, it's a huge market, that no one else is getting close to from that perspective. Let us have another break here. You are watching The Wagon Wheel. I'm sorry, trying to find the right ad. You're watching The Wagon Wheel, and more of The Wagon Wheel after this. Cricket boards actually make watching their games almost impossible now. I spend almost as much time trying to find where I can view it as I do actually following the action. That is why I use NordVPN. They let me find all the cricket I want to watch while protecting me from the nasty side of the internet. Nord will free your cricket matches. Grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/good areas to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan plus 4 additional months on top. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Watch every match with NordVPN. Jeremy says, if you could interview any cricketer who's no longer living, who would it be and why? I do get this question a bit. I'll probably change it every time. I probably should have reached out to Rachel Hayhoe Flint during her life, and I could have done something quite special. So it's annoying to me that I didn't do that. Richie Benaud is probably another one that I probably should have reached out to. Those are two that I think were within my career grasp that I didn't think that way at the time. I had Richie Benaud's email for ages too, and it would not have been hard to get a hold of Rachel Hayhoe Flint either. So those are two. If you're going back in history, I suppose Leary, George Headley actually would be really high up on that. I'd really like to talk to George Headley. Bill O'Reilly, the leg spinner. Victor Trumper. Yeah, I think those would be some of the main ones. I suppose Grace as well. But yeah, I think those would be some of the main ones. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else. Oh, Jack Iverson, I suppose, would be another very interesting guy to talk to. And Les Ames. I think Les Ames would be fascinating. Hurt says, please name your top 3 Red Inca pods you've done so far and why. Oh, God. I don't know how many episodes we've done of it. Did we start in 2020? It's 2025. We wouldn't have done one a week because we kind of stopped doing them one a week, although some weeks we had 2 anyway. So it's probably 200 episodes, right? I loved the first one with Paul Radley because I wanted to prove that you could talk about interesting cricket stuff and that you didn't need Harsha Bogle or Michael Vaughan or Adam Gilchrist or anyone like that to have that conversation with. And we were talking about UAE cricket, but a brilliant story, which Paul Radley ended up writing a book about. So for me, that was really special. So I think, yeah, that would probably be where to start. I still think about that episode, and we've done a follow-up on it as well. The Mark Cole episode is obviously one of the more special ones. I was really sad that it didn't get as many listens and as views. I still have a kind of a bigger project that I want to do with Mark Cole one day and go back and do it. He was so open and honest. It could not have been easy for him to be like that. And, he didn't know me at all. And I was asking, quite full-on questions. It's a tough episode to listen to, but I found it incredibly inspiring, and still wish him the best. I love when I see his name pop up somewhere and he's got a job somewhere. So those two definitely stand out. I'm trying to think if there's any other. I've done so many episodes that I loved. Like, I love talking to Harsha Bogle about him as a cricketer because I just felt like if I was going to get him on, I wanted it to be something interesting. And I know what it's like to be. Generally, you get asked on to do podcasts and they just want to talk about your journey into the business. And like, you tell that story, like, I must have told that story 200 times. He must have told it 1,000, right? 2,000. And I didn't want to just, you have a relationship with someone as well, and you don't want to exploit it by just getting them on. I wanted it to be something that added to the conversation, and I feel like that podcast really did, and I hope he felt the same way. Halfway through, of course, he took over and just started asking me stuff, but that's Harsha, and that's who he is. So yeah, I think those 3 stand out. I mean, Neil Wagner one recently was a sort of a bucket list type one. We had people like AB de Villiers were, absolutely incredible. I love that. So I know that the Jade Dernbach one, which I really like doing, is something that a lot of bowlers started passing around. So I like hearing stories like that. That I wouldn't say it changed Jade's career because I think he already had the coaching thing, but like people started thinking about him differently on the back of that. Um, yeah, obviously Jessica, the first trans player for the ICC to change regulations on. I think that was a really important episode. Um, we've had some, about some dark and hard to listen to subjects and some, sort of joyous ones as well. So, yeah, there's plenty out there. Satchmo says Ian Botham took 229 wickets at 22.89 in his first 50 tests, which is the sixth best average in that era. Even if you start the clock at the end of Packer, he's on 122 wickets at 25.78, which is the ninth best for test seamers. Does that not make Botham a genuine test bowler in that era, not just a great all-rounder? Yes, but it's an incredibly weak era of cricket, Satchmo. Like, as in, a lot of the best bowlers in the world weren't playing for their country all that much, or were really tired when they played for their country. So it's a weird period of time, and I have no problem with him being a specialist bowler at that end. But you've got to look at the other end of his career as well. So I think he would have got chosen for England as a specialist bowler. I mean, throughout the 80s, he had the second best bowling average for England. So yeah, he was definitely a specialist bowler for long periods of time. I don't think anyone would argue against that. We do want to do a big piece on both of them at one stage. We just haven't got around to it. William says, I really enjoyed your TikTok recently about what cricket has learned from other sports in relation to the Litch switch. Oh, yeah. We're talking about Phoebe Litchfield and her shot a little bit. What do you think could become a professionally quality quicker? Oh, okay. A baseball player learning cricket or a cricketer learning baseball. We've seen both struggle. I think the basic skill sets are very similar in that what you're looking for, what you can see, and everything else. But I think once you're a professional cricketer, I just think it's going to be very hard for you ever to become a baseballer because unless you were playing baseball all the way through at the same age. So that sort of era when there were South African guys that would do that, and obviously the Chappell brothers and Alan Border and those sorts of guys, I think they would have found it much easier. But I think if you haven't been doing it and you just switch over, I just think that all the triggers are different. And so I'm not sure we would actually have someone who could change. Maybe if they're just a freak athlete, like a Deion Sanders type guy, right? Like, or a Michael Jordan type guy. Perhaps those sorts of people could do it. But you'd have to be a freak athlete to do it. I don't think you do it as just a professional baseballer or a professional cricketer. I think you'd have to be beyond that to be able to switch over mid-career. And generally people who have switched over sports mid-career, and I do mean switched over, I don't mean Susie Bates, who's playing cricket and basketball at the same time, or Elise Perry, who's playing football and cricket at the same time, or all the old Australian guys who used to do stuff like that. I mean more the people who's like switch sports at 26, 27. I think those sorts of people, like Michael Jordan or Anthony Mundine or Nova Paris Kneebone, those are usually just elite athletics athletes. Elite athletic athletes. There's a phrase for you. Put that on a t-shirt. But where they just, I think they could almost do everything. Was it Muhammad Ali who said, I've never played golf, but I'd be the best golfer in the world? That kind of athleticism, right? Where you just, it can almost fit into any box. Like, I've had this conversation before with friends. Like, what sports couldn't LeBron James be good at, right? Being a jockey might be one. His ability to move around at his size with his power makes it, if he could become a tennis player, like, how do you beat LeBron James? Like, I would assume it'd just be a nightmare. And so, those sorts of athletes, and Serena Williams would be another one, where, some of the great decathletes, those sorts of people, you just look at them and just go, could they not just move to 4 or 5 different sports without any issue at all? Rhys says, What about Root's game makes him so good at rotating the strike? I know he has a good technique, but he seems so much better than almost any one of his peers. Is it a mentality thing? We wrote about it in the book, Rhys, a little bit. I say that it's the unsexiest superpower of all time, but I do think it's Root's main superpower. There isn't really a place to bowl to Root where he can't rotate strike. So I think that's got to be at the top level, right? So you can't bowl the channel outside off stump because he could score from third all the way around to cover. And I mean, obviously he can score everywhere, but I mean score singles easily in any of those spots. So you can't hang the ball wide to him, right? And he's not really a nick-off merchant to the wide ball, so it's not like you're eventually going to get him out doing that. If you bowl the channel in the off stump, he tightens that up a little bit, but he could still score from sort of backward point to cover point pretty, almost automatically, right? If you bowl straighter to him, he can not only can hit the gap on the leg side. So a lot of players have like a shot on the leg side, so they hit it to forward of square leg or backward of square leg or wide of mid on or whatever. He has the ability to go again, probably almost, I would say all of those versions. So there's no width or line that you can bowl to him. The same with length. You can't really keep him on the crease bowling overly full or overly short the way that you can to other players. So that's all batting technical skills. The second thing is the placement that he has with those. So not only can he repeat those shots, but he can put the ball in the exact spot he needs to hit one. So I remember during the 2023 Ashes, Pat Cummins just wanted the fielder out at deep point to stop the boundaries, right? And Steve Smith, and I think Marnus might have been doing this as well, but I remember Steve Smith just kept saying to him, you could hear in the stump mic sometimes, saying something along the lines of, he's just going to hit a single there all day. Because once you give him even a slight opening, he'll be able to do that. The second is that he wants those runs, right? Like he's actively looking for it. For him to say, well, it doesn't look for singles, right? Maybe Joe Root's more on the, Steve Waugh? Even someone like Virat Kohli, who I think is a really good runner and uses running. I think when Virat Kohli defends, he's still defending and then thinking about the single, right? I think when Joe Root is defending, he is defending from a position to score the single. And he's also talking about good athletes, he's a very fast athlete. He doesn't have the most natural running style, but I think he's a very good athlete. So he can run them all day. He's very fit. But yeah, I think it's, they say in Australian cricket that you try and hit every ball for 4, then 3, then 2, then 1, right? I don't think Root is that kind of player. I think he's more like, I'm going to defend this, but I'm going to defend it into this gap. So if he bowls here, I've got this gap. If he bowls here, I've got this gap. And if he bowls here, I've got this gap. And that's how I will get off the line, off the crease. Raju says, hi, Jarrod. We see left-handed batters often being targeted by right-hand bowlers from over and around the wicket. Why does the same not happen against right-hand batters? Because left-arm bowlers like Stark, Johnson, Zohir Khan in the past, and Jansen, to some extent do it, but not against left-handed batters. We see left-hand bowlers. But don't you mean against right-hand batters at the end? I think he means right-hand batters. So the main reason is that left-arm bowlers are so grooved to bowl to right-handers and to bowl to left-handers that there's actually, you could see it in the way that left-arm finger spinners bowl and the left-arm seamers and left-arm wrist spinners bowl, that they're almost sloped towards the right-hand side, so towards the right-hand batter. So they fall over a little bit more than right-handers do because that is their natural way of bowling, because they have to be able to get the ball into that position for their best delivery, right? Whereas right-arm bowlers are usually much more upright and much straighter at the crease when they bowl. So that's a big part of it. So when you bowl around the wicket, you kind of, there is an element of not being as technically correct to be able to do that, which is probably why Wasim Akram is the guy who breaks that, right? And he can bowl over around the wicket to right-handers. But the second thing is, if you look at the vast majority of left-arm bowlers, seam bowlers, they are bringing the ball back. So most left-arm seamers are only ever going to be picked on either pace or swing, right? And a combination of both is obviously killer. But they almost all swing the ball back in or away from left-handers, right? They all swing it that way. It is so rare to ever see a left-arm bowler who swings the ball away from a right-hand batter. Again, Wasim was the difference there. What is starting to happen now is, especially through the wobble ball, we're not seeing as many left-arm swing bowlers anymore. And we are seeing bowlers who bowl the wobble ball. And so Trent Boult is probably the first one to do this. But I was writing about this in 2008, I think, with Mitchell Johnson. Mitchell Johnson coming around the wicket and bowling cutters is almost unplayable at his pace. Bowling at, 130, 135 kilometers an hour. And I've been waiting for a left-arm bowler to do that since I saw him do it. I thought the Fizz was going to be my man. I don't know how you play Mustafizur Rahman when he was fully fit and his arm was working the way it should have been, bowling at 138 kilometers an hour, getting lateral movement away from you in a test match. I don't know how you face him. It's like it, and we haven't seen enough of it. And we've seen the left-handers struggle from it, and we haven't seen the right-handers struggle from it enough. But we are starting to see that movement of left-arm bowlers trying around the wicket a lot more and earlier on. And that was the big thing with the right-handers. I don't think right-arm bowlers bowled around the wicket to left-handers enough. And when they would do it, it was generally when the ball was older and it wasn't doing anything. And so there is an effect that happens in your brain where you go, well, every time I bowl around the wicket, the ball doesn't move and they just smash me everywhere. Whereas if you do it early on, as we've now found, of course you're going to get movement. So I still think too many left-arm bowlers use it as a backup rather than front on. But I think in the next generation, and Marco Jansen might be the guy, but it might not be Marco Jansen. We're going to see a left-arm bowler who specializes in bowling around the wicket. But it's mostly to do with the fact that left-arm bowlers, by the time they get to professional cricket, their main skill has been bringing the ball back into a right-hander, and that doesn't make any sense from around the wicket. Around the wicket, what you actually want to be able to do is take it the other way. But because of the wobble ball, and now we know a lot more, and also left-arm bowlers are being trained better. They used to be like, just bowl in swing, don't worry about anything else. That is not what happens anymore. So there's a big change happening. Sinoy says, do you believe team captaincy should continue to hold the same status it has over the most of cricket history, or be used as a way of trialing captaincy prospects the way we do for all other positions in cricket? Give them 4 or 5 games and see how they go. This came to mind due to Bethel's selection as captain. Yeah, I think Test cricket, captaincy has already changed. I talked about that on Shubman Gill being the Test captain and being the T20 vice captain. India is one of the last places where I think there is still a lot of held up in the captaincy as a title. And there's a couple of other countries that are holding on to it as well. I think everyone else now sees it more as leadership groups and strategic and different formats and everything else. So yeah, I think the more we go forward with international cricket, the less we will see captain as the voice of God. I think we've already moved on from that, but I think it will continue to happen as well. PJ says, is there a bare minimum definition for the openers to have done their job? See off the new ball, see off the openers, protect number 3 as long as possible, or is it a certain amount of runs? Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things, PJ, where it probably just depends on the surface, right? I think if you're not using a Duke's ball and you can face, 60 deliveries? 60 to 80 deliveries? You've probably done your job in most parts of the world, haven't you? You've allowed for the number 3 or the number 4, number 5 to come in with an older ball in a situation like that. If it's a Duke's ball, I think it is a little bit different, just because they do tend to move for a little bit longer. And then, as you said, you've got the wicket, right? There are probably some situations. There was, I don't know what he made, but Zach Crawley at Lord's in that test match. I did a video about it of how he actually helped England win that test match without batting particularly well, just because India couldn't find a way to dismiss him. They hit him, they beat his edge, they did everything they needed to do, but they couldn't get him out. And so it would be hard to say that he didn't do his job in that. And I don't think he would have faced a lot of balls in that game, in either innings. So there you have what was a low-scoring test match, where, yeah, so you have a low-scoring test match where he had the ability to make an impact without even batting that well, I would say. Where are we, Lords? Yeah, so he made 40. No, that can't be right. He made 18 off 43 in the first innings. And I remember it as being really scratchy. And then he made 22 off 49. They won that test match by 22 runs. But it isn't so much the amount of runs he made. It's the fact that when the ball was doing everything, Ollie Pope didn't come in certainly in the first innings. And then in the second innings, he did come in and went out. But Crawley held the other end, right? And so Joe Root was set by the time Crawley went out. Am I getting my numbers right here? Which meant that Harry Brook came in at 87. Who's out? Duckett's out, Pope's out. Yeah, so Harry Brook comes out at the 15th over mark. There's only 50 on the score. But if you remember, when Harry Brook came out, he batted in a completely different way to everyone else, partly because the ball wasn't doing as much at that point. It was still hard to score, and it was a really interesting one, the way he went about it. But yeah, but the general point there, PJ, is there's a player who's done his job by facing about 90 balls in the game and never scoring more than 22 runs. So there isn't like a one-size-fits-all, and it's probably something you can't tell at the time. And I've been in games where the openers have done really, really well on a tricky pitch, and then the rest of the team's collapsed it anyway. And you're like, well, they did their job. It's just that no one else did. But they're the guys who got in. So the team's like, oh, you should have gone on. It's like, well, the rest of us should have scored over 12. That's how these things work. We'll have another quick break. And then when we come back, there will be chats from the super kinds of chats here on Wagon Wheel. I have traveled the cricketing world, and so I've collected two things: the phone numbers of random taxi drivers and overseas SIM cards. Rideshare apps have fixed the first part, and Sally is doing the second. Now, all you need is their eSIM on whatever plan works for you. You activate it, and you can use it anywhere in the cricketing world. It helps you save money. It is a global solution to a global problem. Stop fiddling with tiny SIMs and get the one that does it all. Go to Sally.com Good Areas and use the code Good Areas to get an exclusive 15% off your first purchase. Fly free with Sally. All right, welcome back. Fox One says, who would you pick, Martin, Crowe, or Kane? I think Martin will edge out over Kane as he was a trailblazer as a captain. As a cricketer, although you do have Kane's bowling, although not always legal. I think as a overall cricketer, Martin Crowe is probably more important to New Zealand and was picked well before he was ready as a player in a very, very ordinary side. Whereas I think Kane comes through when there are, McCullum's around and Ross Taylor's around and teams a little bit more steady. I'm not saying they were great when he started, but a little bit, there was talent around him. Who would the second best New Zealand batter have been when Crowe played? Because I think Glenn Turner was gone. So it would have been John Wright. It's a big difference between that and, a Ross Taylor type player, right? So I think it was really hard for Martin Crowe. And then I also think that Martin Crowe being such a brilliant technician, that if his body hadn't have gone, I think he would have had a huge run in his 30s. Whereas actually he retires really early from cricket. When not long before that, we'd seen just how good he was. 92 World Cup, he was just magnificent. And yet he almost plays his last game there. I still think as a test batter, and if we're just talking about as a test batter, you would have to go with Kane. There are obviously holes within Kane's record, and there is an incredible period of time where Martin Crowe I think it's a 5 or 6 year period where he averages well over 50 in an era when no one's averaging anywhere near 50, but he does it against everyone, right? And that's always been the mark against Kane. Being someone who knew Martin Crowe and worked with him and was friends with him, I've always found this tough. But I think with the art of batting, we did end up saying that probably Kane was slightly better. But if you're talking about impact on cricket and everything else, I think Martin Crowe is very, very different, right? Martin Crowe was talking about T20 cricket when there was no T20 cricket, right? He was changed the way we play one-day cricket as well. He's an incredible mind when it comes to cricket, and a tragic loss that we lost him so early, but also that he had so many issues after his retirement, right? And it really, I don't think cricket got the most out of Martin Crowe, and I think that's a real shame because I think he had so much more to give. Anurag says, in the previous Wagon Wheel, you said the players should be paid much higher in the IPL. Would you raise the salary caps or remove the caps altogether? No, I like salary caps. I think it gives some flexibility with the way that people play and everything else. So I'm not against salary caps, but at the very minimum, the IPL players should be getting 25% of the pool, and that should be split up amongst all the players. It's how the big leagues play it, right? The NBA is 48%, 50%. Cricket Australia is 50%. 50% is a long way off for the IPL players, but they're the reason we watch it, right? That's why it matters. And they should be paid. Yeah, IPL players are tragically underpaid. A lot of people in cricket are underpaid in many different ways, but no one's more underpaid than an IPL player. Joe Cricket says, who is better, Pujara or Laxman, if we apply the art of batting criteria? We had Laxman higher than Pujara. I don't think they were, Shaun's not on here. I don't think they were massively far from each other. There's just, I think, even considering pitches and everything else, I think Laxman was a much more rounded player than Pujara off the top of my head. And also some of the times when Pujara did his best work overseas, the runs didn't come. So it doesn't give him as much of a bounce to his numbers. But yeah, I would argue that Laxman was a better player than Pujara, but Pujara was fantastic as well. But I don't think there's a massive amount between them. Arco says, does it annoy you when people do squad analysis without any research? Few experts are being surprised why Mahdi Miraz is not in Bangladesh squad when a layman's view should be how terrible he is in T20s. I still kind of expected him to be picked. And I think you have to remember with some of that, like, me and Robbie just tried to do that ourselves. And it's not about doing the research. It's about the fact that there is 130 cricketers. And sometimes it can be really tough, to go through that. I actually don't think, I still think Mahdi Hassan can play in T20 cricket, by the way. It's just his international numbers haven't quite shown it, but I think there is still a player there. But I get your overall point. Look, the problem is this industry doesn't really promote research. These guys who work in this tournament. So, Robbie's off learning pronunciations of players and, reading through the stats packages and everything. I don't know if that's going to get him, he will feel better in himself and he will know he's done a good job. I don't know if that's going to get him more of a gig the next time. Whereas having talked to some people in some other sports media industries, the people who do the research, you still have star culture at the top, of course, but the people who do the research do get rewarded with more jobs and everything. I haven't seen that in cricket. So it's hard. I only started turning my head to Asia cricket, the Asia Cup, like a couple of days ago, right? Like I've been doing lots of different projects and working on some things and doing some business stuff and everything. So and I haven't done an Asian Cup preview until me and Robbie kind of did one before. So that's not the level I want. And that's the other issue that I found in cricket is you kind of only get paid for like the tournament itself. You don't really get paid enough to go off and do your research beforehand, and you're probably working other jobs beforehand. And so you turn up, and the first thing that you usually do is, I would say this, and I've said this my whole career, is usually wrong. It's why I don't do many previews, because I kind of need to be within it, and that's because that's when I'm getting paid, that's when I'm getting games, that's when you're doing everything else. But your overall point is true, and we are seeing a big separation in cricket between the people who do the research and those who don't. God, someone told me one the other day, and I can't remember who it was, but there was a famous commentator got caught saying that they hadn't seen someone, and everyone was like, "What? Like, how is that even possible?" And it's getting harder and harder. Like, it's okay not to know Rhys Mariu, right? Um, because he's 22 years old and has only played A games and hasn't played any T20 games. But when you get commentators saying the same thing about, I can't remember who the player was, but you know, established international players over a period of time, it is frustrating. But you know, I look at it the other way. It's one of the reasons why I found it so easy to have a career, by just doing the work. Amusko says, why is everyone agreeing that there is too much cricket compared to other sports? Top cricketers seem to play very few games. I don't think anyone's saying that they're playing too many specific games. I think they're saying they're playing too many games that don't matter, or that those games aren't. So if you're, compare it to baseball, which is what, 160 games a year, right? But baseball isn't as long as cricket, and you're not doing as much running around in the field as in that particular way. But also, you're playing back to backs, and you're playing games. One game on a Thursday and one game on a Saturday, and they rest players a lot more in baseball, especially the pitchers and everyone. All that sort of stuff. But all of that is earning the MLB this huge amount of money, which goes back to the players, right? In cricket, you've got players playing in the ILT20 one day and Bangladesh the next day, and a week earlier they were in South Africa 20. That's the kind of too much cricket that we are talking about. Sri Lanka playing ODIs versus Zimbabwe when the next two major tournaments they have are T20. That's the kind of major too much cricket that we have issues with. I mean, it's hard for me to answer something like this because obviously I don't know the full thing that you're talking about. But generally, what we're talking about is that the calendar doesn't make any sense and it isn't building towards anything. Josh Ford says, was Mark Cole the coach who spoke about the ice cream? Yeah, I think we called the episode The Ice Cream Coach. It was quite early on in Red Inca. As I said, it's still something I want to go. But if you can find the episode, The Ice Cream Coach, Mark Cole on Red Inca, it really is worth listening to. And I don't say that because I made it. It's just worth listening to. And Unique says, in the art of batting, you've got that in the art of batting, how do you rate Viswanath and Azhar? Both lauded for spin play, but definitely not top 50. Yeah, I think we mentioned Azhar briefly in one of the chapters on spin. I can't remember if Viswanath was in our data. I'm just trying to remember back, sorry. I don't think he's mentioned in the book unless he's mentioned in it later on. We actually have a proxy for him from India, and maybe he's mentioned in that chapter. I can't remember. But Navjot Sidhu is the guy that we kind of mentioned, because I think that having talked to people around the game, everyone sort of thought that Navjot Sidhu is the poster child for that player, right? And also I had video of him, and I watched him play when I was young. So I had plenty of opinions on him. I had video to back it up, and we could see him up against Warne, right? And we could just see what an incredible player of spin he was. So we kind of talked about that archetype a little bit. But I still think those other two guys are fantastic. And I've said this a lot before. I think that there is still if you're very good against pace, but not good against spin, it's not really seen as a black mark against you in the same way that it is if it's vice versa. So I think it's worth talking up those other guys. Azhar, I thought, was a great player. And Viswanath is a little bit before my time. So I didn't see him as much. But again, I still think this is a top-level test match player. I just want to have a quick look at his numbers. Just sometimes, this is going to sound weird, but sometimes when I look at someone's numbers, they remind me. Yeah, no, I was right. So he averaged 39 in England and 45 in Australia. So it wasn't as if there was a huge drop-off for him when playing, either the bouncy ball or whatever. Remember, some of those numbers against Australia were not against the best side. And that England side was strong, but probably not one of the most elite England sides he went up against. He did struggle against the West Indies, but again, that was before their fast bowling attack really came about. I just think Viswanath's a very, very good player who probably didn't get it. One of the marks against him when we were looking him up was that he averages 47 at home and 36 away from home. And we have players with even better records than that, didn't make the top 50. But is he a chance for the top 100, I would have thought? And I think Azza definitely is. I haven't looked at his numbers in a while. Unique says it's 2,125, and Kimber the third is updating the art of batting. Is there a chapter on DRS, and what does it say? We mentioned DRS already in the book, so I'm not sure we need an updated version of it. I've got another project coming out shortly. We talk about how DRS has changed modern batting. I suppose the Kevin Peterson bit and Raul Driver talking about that is a good example of it. We talk about the wobble ball, and that's kind of a combination with the DRS as well. LBWs to seam bowlers. So yeah, it's kind of already there. It's already changed batting. So the bigger question to me is, what will be the next big change to batting, right? The DRS has already been this era's big change. What happens next, and how things sort of develop from there. One last super chat says, the scene uploader says, some wobble ball seamers say they control which way it goes. My guess is it's the fingers rolling on the ball to either side, a bit like cutters. Like Cummins mostly goes away after pitching. What else could it be? Yeah, I would assume it's probably something similar. I don't think players control which way it goes as far as... This is the way I've heard of it. Jimmy Anderson was the first player we know who said he thought he knew how to make the ball move away or move back, right? But actually, quite a few of his balls still go dead straight, even though he's rolling his fingers on it. So it's not as if you can just roll your fingers on one side and make sure that you're all bowling leg cutters. They would still be a bunch of straight balls in there as well. I think what is happening, though, is we are getting a better understanding of exactly the dexterous dynamics of this delivery. And so people are starting to understand it a little bit better. But yeah, I would assume it's if you come down slightly one side or the other, you can put that there. But the basic way of explaining it is that people who bowl outswing naturally, usually their ball comes back in, their wobble ball comes back in, and vice versa. So if you bowl in swing naturally, your wobble ball goes away. So if that's what they originally found out, the players, right? Is there not a way of just, when you want to bowl the wobble ball, of cantering your action for an in-swinger when you want it to go away, and cantering your action for an outswinger when you want it to come in, right? I might be getting too, into the weeds there, but the way it's been explained to me, that is how you basically go around it. It's a really fascinating question. Every time I've ever researched anything on the wobble ball, I've been told something definitively, and then it doesn't, and then I found out facts that don't fit it. So I would say that means that we don't know 100%, right? Maybe Jimmy Anderson did, maybe Muhammad Asif did, but I think most players generally don't know. And that, while that is the case, it makes it very dangerous for batters, right? But also bowlers are going to want to work it out as much as they can going forward as well. Thank you to... Oh, I've already done that one. That's the same guy. I think that was the same guy, wasn't it? I didn't answer someone else's question there. Yeah. Hypercourse comes in. You still get commentators on televised women's cricket who don't know how to pronounce Siva Brunt. Just Hypercourse, it's worth saying. You still have commentators on TV who still call him Josh Butler, and Ravi Ashwin. So the point being is that there's a lack of professionalism there, and I do think it's a big issue, and I've talked about it quite a bit before, but I don't want to just have a go at the commentators, because I think the whole system is sort of busted around them as well. Anyway, I can't go into that again. Thank you very much. We've got some interesting pieces coming up. We've got one about the difference between India and the rest of the Asia Cup teams at the moment before that tournament. Then we've got something on Nissanka coming up. And we just put out the dictionary of T20, I was going to say T20 cricket, but of modern cricket, of how things go. So It's a piece that people have been asking us for ages. We will continue to add to it, and it's probably the first in a series, but we basically go through, you know, true average and true strike rate and all these different metrics that we use. And we're going to continue to use them because we know they tell the story of cricket better, but we also have to tell the story of these metrics. So the first piece is up. I think it went up today on the main site, went up on yesterday on Substack. So if you go to goodareas.co, you can find that as well. But we're going to keep the video. We probably won't add to it all that much. It'll probably stay, but there'll be other videos that go with it. But on goodareas.co, if you find that piece, we're going to keep explaining new metrics there and add to it. So that becomes kind of the modern dictionary. There are terms that we use for test cricket and then also for one-day cricket and T20 cricket and how we look at all these sorts of things. It's something that we're very passionate about because it hasn't quite entered the mainstream as much as it should have already. And there are much better ways of talking about players than the existing metrics we have. I think we're still very lucky that in first-class cricket and test cricket, average is such a good storytelling device in a way that RBI in baseball was not, right? Or points scored in basketball is not. But there are so many other things that we can add to it or warp it with or, you know, add extra context with that gives us so much more information. And, you know, we see ourselves at Good Areas as more storytellers than anything else. And these are the new storytelling metrics. It allows us to give you information that we'd never been available before, right? So that you have a real understanding of cricketers. And that's the whole idea. You know, we don't want that, you know, we kind of talk about Jade Dernbat in the piece. Second Jade reference on this podcast. And one of the reasons we talk about him is because the raw numbers don't actually tell the story of him as a cricketer. And it's much more nuanced and interesting than that. And that's essentially where we are going in the future. And we're happy to be a big part of it here, while also occasionally mispronouncing players' names. While trying not to, of course. But thank you very much to everyone here on the Wagon Wheel. And we will see you again probably pretty soon. We're not 100% sure what our Asia Cup plans are. But stay tuned to this channel and also the main channel. There's plenty of content coming up around the Asia Cup, but there might even be some more about the games themselves. We'll see you again very soon.
Ross Taylor couldn't see at night or when the clouds were in. Eventually he had to see an eye specialist who would fix his eyesight. In the 2 years before the change, he still averaged more than 50 in international cricket. The top level of batting talent can basically see in the dark. That is who we are talking about in our new book, The Art of Batting. Head over and order your copy today. This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. If you want to be part of the community that makes content like this, head over now.